Across history, some crimes stand apart. 3 towns, 3 different times, 3 killers who moved like shadows with an axe in their hands. But let us be clear, the dead in these cases were not killed by ghosts. They were killed by hands, by choices, by cruelty that wore ordinary clothes and lived next door. We look into the dark for monsters, but the most terrifying things in the ledger were often put there by human hands. Tonight, we open 3 different axe murder cases. Here in
The Witness Ledger.
Entry number 0, 4, 5. Location, Bavaria, Germany. Date, March 31st to April 4th, 1922. Subject, Hinterkaifeck axe murders. Status, filed and unresolved. Bavaria, Germany, March 1922. The Grubers were not a family anyone talked about. They were ordinary, hard-working farmers living on a remote farmstead called Hinterkaifeck, isolated, surrounded by dense forest, the kind of place where a scream carries and reaches no one. 6 people lived within those walls. Andreas Gruber, the patriarch, his wife, Cecilia, their daughter, Victoria, Victoria's 2 young children, Cecilia and Josef, and the new maid, Maria Baumgartner, who had arrived only hours prior. Days before the silence set in, Andreas Gruber began noticing things. He told a neighbor about footprints in the snow, clear, deliberate prints leading from the woods straight toward the farm, but none leading back. Then came a strange newspaper in the house that no one had bought. Scratches and footsteps echoing from the attic at night. He told his family, "Someone is in the house." The neighbor later noted that Andreas was not an imaginative man. He did not scare easily. But that week, he was afraid of his own home. It wasn't until days later that neighbors noticed the eerie quiet. The family had vanished from daily life. The farm was too still. When they finally checked the property, they found what the ledger records as one of the most brutal scenes in European history. 6 bodies. The family had been lured, one by one, into the dark of the barn and dispatched with a mattock, a heavy, axe-like farming tool with a flat, blunt end. Not a weapon brought to the scene, an implement of the farm itself. The killer used what was already in his hand. But here is where Hinterkaifeck stops being a murder and starts being a nightmare. The young 7-year-old Cecilia was not killed quickly. She was found in the bedding, her hands still clutching her own torn-out hair where the blood had dried. Investigators determined she had been alive for hours after the attack, unable to move, unable to call for help. The killer left her there in the dark and did not come back to finish. The most chilling detail in the ledger: the killer didn't flee after the murders. The snow outside confirmed it. No footprints led away from the farmstead. Instead, he remained. For days, smoke continued to rise from the chimney. The cattle were fed. Someone had prepared and eaten meals in the kitchen, making themselves at home while 6 bodies lay cold just yards away. When investigators searched the farmhouse from top to bottom, they looked up. In the attic, directly above the family's living quarters, they found shifted hay, bedding, and discarded breadcrumbs. It was a nest, a place where someone had been laying, sleeping, and watching through the floorboards for days, just waiting for the right moment to come down. The murder weapon was found left in the barn, unhidden, uncleaned. Investigators interviewed everyone: neighbors, travelers, tradesmen. A suspect with a grudge was named years later, but the evidence was circumstantial. No confession, no conviction. The case went cold in 1922. The farmstead itself was completely demolished a year later, as if the local community tried to tear the memory from the earth. But some shadows refused to be buried. 6 people. 1 killer. No motive. Hinterkaifeck remains, filed and unresolved. Entry number 046. Location: Villisca, Iowa, USA. Date: June 10th, 1912. Subject: Villisca murders. Status: filed and unresolved. The Moore family was like any other in the small town of Villisca. Big skies, quiet streets, and neighbors who left their doors unlocked. Josiah and Sarah Moore, their 4 children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul, and 2 overnight guests, Lena and Ina Stillinger, young sisters who had stayed the night after a Children's Day service at the local church. 8 people in total. They locked the doors, turned down the lamps, and went to sleep. They never woke up. An intruder, already hidden in the deep shadows of the house, used the family's own 2-pound axe to end 8 lives in the dead of night. Every victim was struck multiple times, over and over. A blunt, heavy frenzy that spoke of an unimaginable rage. The killer had used the blunt edge of the axe on every victim except Josiah. But violence alone does not make Villisca strange. Here's what does. After the final blow fell, the killer did not run. He didn't flee into the Iowa night. Instead, he systematically went through the house and covered all the mirrors and windows with cloths, blankets, and clothing, not to hide the bodies from the outside world, but to hide the light, to make the house pitch black. And then, he stayed. He moved through the dark. He found a pipe belonging to the patriarch, Josiah Moore, and smoked it. He pulled food from the kitchen icebox and ate a meal. He remained in that house for hours, a guest no one had invited, living comfortably among the dead. Much like the nightmare at Hinterkaifeck, the killer was a temporary resident before he was an executioner. Investigators found a small footprint on a trunk in the attic, directly alongside a discarded pipe. Someone had been standing up there in the stifling heat, looking through the darkness, listening to the family laugh and talk as they returned from church, just waiting for them to fall into a deep sleep. Before slipping away into the morning fog, the killer performed a bizarre, unexplained ritual. He took a 2-pound slab of bacon from the icebox, wrapped it carefully in a towel, and left it on the floor next to the blood-stained axe. But the detail that stops investigators cold concerns the youngest victims, 5-year-old Paul Moore and the Stillinger sisters. One of the young girls was found with her hands clasped together, as if in a final frozen prayer, and the killer, the very same man who had just committed an act of unspeakable brutality, had stood over them and covered their heads with cloths. The suspects were many: a traveling minister with a dark past, a local drifter, a neighbor with a bitter grudge. One man, Henry Moore, no relation, even confessed to the crime, giving details only the killer could know. He was arrested, but later released on a technicality. He died a free man. The actual axe was lost decades ago, stolen from evidence perhaps, or kept by someone who wanted a token to remember that night. Today, the Villisca Axe Murder House still stands, operating as a museum where strangers pay to spend the night in the very rooms where 8 people were bludgeoned. And the reports from visitors are always the same. The sound of children crying from empty bedrooms, the heavy feeling of being watched from the attic stairs, and the smell of pipe smoke, sharp, sweet, and over a century cold, wafting through rooms where no one has smoked for 100 years. A shadow in the hallway, not moving, just standing, waiting for the next guest to look away. Villisca remains, filed and unresolved. Case 049, location New Orleans, Louisiana, US. Date: 1918 to 1919. Subject: the New Orleans Axeman. Status: filed and unidentified. New Orleans, Louisiana. Between 1918 and 1919, the Crescent City lived in a state of pure, suffocating terror. A serial predator was stalking the night, targeting grocery store owners and their families. 6 lost their lives. Many more were left grievously injured. The weapon was a razor, a knife, or most often, the victim's own axes. The killer moved through the heavy, humid air like a ghost. He didn't break down front doors or shatter glass. Instead, his signature entry was meticulous. He would silently use a chisel to remove the lower wooden panels of the back doors, creating just enough space to crawl through. Because the city was suffocatingly hot, people slept with their bedroom doors and windows wide open, praying for a breeze. They never expected what walked in. No clear connection between the victims, no confirmed motive, no viable suspects. The Axeman, as he became known, was a phantom, but he didn't just want blood, he wanted an audience. In March of 1919, the Axeman did something almost no other killer in history has ever done. He wrote a theatrical, taunting letter to the local newspapers. The handwriting was stylish, almost elegant. The letter read, in part, "They have never caught me, and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am very fond of jazz music, and I hereby swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose house a jazz band is in full swing." He gave a specific date, the night of Tuesday, March 19th. He promised to strike again, unless the city played. Not a threat of silence, a demand for music. And the citizens of New Orleans did something extraordinary. They complied. On the night the Axeman named, the entire city erupted. Jazz poured into the midnight air. Professional bands packed the dance halls. Neighborhood phonographs spun on front porches. People threw their windows wide open so the brass and rhythm could drift into the dark, a desperate signal to the monster outside. We are playing. Do not visit. No one was killed that night. Whether the Axeman kept his word, whether the music truly worked, or whether something else happened entirely, no one knows. After that historic night, the murders stopped. The letters ceased. Like smoke rolling off the Mississippi, the Axeman simply disappeared forever. The original letter has been lost to time. All that remains are fading newspaper clippings and memory. Some say he died. Others say he simply moved on to another city, taking another name. But a few, a very few, suggest he wasn't a man at all, a manifestation of New Orleans' darker half, demanding a tribute of music. The Ledger notes this case because no other killer has ever negotiated with an entire city. No other killer has demanded a soundtrack instead of silence. Today, New Orleans has never stopped playing jazz. It follows you down Bourbon Street. It drifts out of open doorways on humid nights. Some say it is a permanent bargain, a ritual repeated every evening. We play. You stay away. Because the Axeman's letter ended with a promise that he would watch for his next opportunity. And somewhere, in the space between a trumpet note and the next, someone might still be listening. The New Orleans Axeman remains, filed and unidentified. Three communities fractured, entire households extinguished in the dark. In each of these accounts, the killer didn't just strike, they lingered, living among the shadows of what they had done, or taunting the very cities they paralyzed with fear. Don't miss the next installment from
The Witness Ledger.